Hello, hello, hello. Good morning. Welcome to Feedback Friday, Art Edition. I'm your host, Jacob. Howdy. Welcome to the stream. So, it probably won't be a very long art day. Have kind of like a company meet in the afternoon. And today we're just going to be doing an individual item. Should be a lot of fun though. It's some of my favorite stuff to work on year round. We're going to be illustrating a new egg for the spring egg hunt. Oh, is my volume really low? Oh, I see. I see what's up. Is that better? Sorry for everyone who cranked up their volume and then I just exploded their ears. Got it, got it. Sound fixed. Yeah, I had it coming through the headset. I hear you. Good morning. Welcome to Feedback Friday Art Edition. I'm your host, Jacob. Hello. Hello, hello, hello. All right, it's all good now. Yeah, so we're going to be doing a illustration of a egg for the spring egg hunt. It's actually some of my favorite content to create. It won't be a long stream today. I have a meeting in the afternoon, but also we should be able to take it from start to finish. So it should be pretty cool. So hello to everyone in the chat, Math, Cohort, Sally, Roma, Draco, Scrad, Sunny, the beer. Hello to you all, Sally, Sunshine. Good morning as well. I don't know how to turn on subtitles. I assume YouTube has some kind of ability to auto-generate them, but it might only be once it's been fully uploaded and processed. So don't know how to do that. Hello, Jason. All right, so I'm going to pop over to the art file because I'm going to just get started on this right away. But yeah, so today we are going to be creating a very lucky egg. It's going to be a challenge egg, as I would kind of think of them, where it's going to take some ability from the hunter to earn this one. So it'll be quite a prize, I think. But those who can achieve it should be able to kind of find a few. But I don't want to kind of like indicate any very specific details because we're still kind of in the plugging in phase, balancing phase. So if things were to change, I wouldn't want to give you the wrong information that you are thrown off by. But yeah, egg, rib egg, yeah. Drop some Keller ribs in there. Why not? All right. So, I suppose I won't be able to avoid the theme of the egg because it's probably going to be pretty apparent to those who are familiar, but we are working on I'll call it luck-based egg. So I'm going to kind of use the kind of motif of the luck charm because I, first of all, think it's quite a nice kind of material study. The design aesthetic will lend itself well to the egg shape. So that's where I'm gonna kind of start from. We'll see where it goes. There isn't like a really specific kind of spec designed for this yet. But here's kind of like a reference that I'm going to be working off of. This is the Super Luck charm, I believe. Yeah, you can tell how old this file is if you were to look at the file name. it's called Trinket Super Luck, and I'm not sure if Dave's kind of talked about this at length before, but like there have been like when we were kind of working on the charm kind of design in the game, internally we were kind of calling them trinkets at the time, and so when they were coded in, that was kind of like the system name that were plugged in for a lot of them, and so some of the names of the files are kind of old enough to retain trinket. So that would have been created effectively, well, I don't know, before terms were actually released, but perhaps that naming just kind of stuck for a while. Yeah. I cannot confirm nor deny, Joel. It's an interesting concept, though. Fabergé. Ooh, that would be really neat to like take it to that level of kind of detail. I personally love kind of putting a lot of extra detail in the eggs because I personally try to focus on the kind of textures and material properties because it's generally, you know, a nice simple shape to build off of, and so there are a few things you get to play with when you're working on kind of like a MouseHunt egg. Number one is obviously kind of like the actual like design on it. You know, if it's like a painted egg, maybe it has mouse face, or it looks like it's colored like a material or a region. Another is like the material, like if you make it kind of more gem-like or made of metal or kind of, you know, mushy and crumbling. That's a lot of fun. But then there's also like silhouette to kind of like, you know, you have this simple shape and then just kind of like break those edges a little bit to kind of like, you know, make it read in a more interesting way. And of more recent, I've really been enjoying kind of breaking those silhouettes further. I don't know, maybe I'm like wanting to spoil an egg that I made recently because I enjoy it and I want people to like get to see detail. I'm gonna hold off on it for now. We'll see. We'll see. Maybe I'll like give a glimpse of it near the end of the stream. So we'll see about that. I should probably save this as a new file. There we go. That way I can do a proper time lapse of this, hopefully. All right, so saved. Cool. Okay, so now this is starting as its own file. I do have time lapse begun. So if you're watching this as VOD and you're not interested in seeing me lay down every brush stroke and just ramble for a few hours, you can jump to the probably last 5 minutes of this video and just witness it kind of come together nice and quickly because of the time-lapse system in Clip Studio. But without further ado, I'm going to begin kind of just laying out the potential design of this egg. So what I think could look neat is I like the wing motif for the luck charms, as well as of course the spirals. I think that that's kind of like how you identify them as like luck specific. A lot of like other charms that have kind of luck incorporated into them, I've tried to bring in the wings element, a bit of the colors, and so, you know, I think that's the language that makes sense around it. So I'm going to bring in kind of like some wings. Now, the challenge is the eggs don't have a lot of like empty space over here to kind of like have wings outstretched, right? So I have pretty limited kind of room to tuck a wing, so I'm thinking it'll be more kind of like folded in, right? So like, you know, it's closed its kind of wingspan a bit, but they're nice and big wings, I suppose you could say, for the egg itself. So it seems like it could be powerful, right? But yeah, it would obviously be more impressive if it was kind of like spread apart and kind of, you know, ready to take flight. But yeah, I think with this limitation, this is probably the only way to try and show that alternately, I could kind of make the wings tuck in a different direction. So we could maybe quickly see if that works any better, like if it was kind of more down here. Yeah, I don't think that one would work quite as well. Yeah, I'm not going to go with that. All right. Looks more like a dragon egg. It could, but I think because I'm going to try and use the kind of like material quality of this kind of like more kind of golden glass effect, I think that it'll kind of like really remain as kind of like this lucky idea. I think I'll try and get a little more glow going on with it as well, because like the ultimate luck is blinding, and that might be too far for an egg, because you know it might be hard to even see what's going on. And I like kind of the rendering here, so I want to bring some of that in here. But maybe somewhere in between the two. Do want to move that over. Almost had a deja vu moment there. Will there be new eggs for old areas? Trying to remember what ones we've done. I think that there is at least one new egg, but it's not like a super old area. Yeah. Can't remember exactly what eggs, but yeah, I think that for the most part we're kind of like making eggs that are kind of like anyone can go after them in any area potentially ish, or the areas are like new or fairly like relevant. I think we got like a decent coverage of eggs for kind of like older areas, but that said, we always kind of like are looking for new egg ideas for the future, because you know I think that that's a really exciting moment for a lot of players to kind of like have goals that they can set for themselves, and kind of you know maybe even plan for if they kind of like didn't get it the year it comes out, and kind of want to kind of prepare the next year. So if you have egg suggestions, we're always open to kind of like receiving those, and we have a document that we kind of have running for egg ideas that we like to try and kind of toss stuff in, so that when the time comes and it's like, all right, we're going to make like, you know, 7 eggs or something like that, we can kind of like figure out what ones would kind of like give a good range to the player base. Welcome, Free Schmidt. Twisted carmine egg. Do we not have a twisted carmine egg? I kind of remember a number of them, but I forget a lot of them. Like, I think that there was probably an effort to kind of like have an egg for a region, and then like characters like Twisted Carmine would have a high probability of being able to drop that egg, and that kind of covered a lot of kind of older areas. But yeah, there could be some specifically interesting challenges for mouse hunters if we wanted to kind of introduce those, if we had like really good ideas to kind of like, oh, this would be a really exciting egg, and a lot of fun for a player to go after. But I think right now we've kind of like signed off on like, all right, these are the eggs that we want to introduce, because you know we don't want to like be like, here's 30 new eggs, you will not be able to go after ones that you're currently missing and these all in the span of the event. That would not be very fun. So we have to kind of like be careful about how many we add, and just kind of like making sure that they are kind of like exciting, rewarding, and all kinds of, like there's a lot of considerations. I know that I was hanging out the other day on call with Giorgio and Josh, and we were just kind of like going over just the like balance potential for what could be inside an egg, and like just even just figuring that detail out was pretty involved and lengthy, because there's just a lot of potential behind doing them right, and we want to do them right and make them rewarding and exciting and make a lot of sense to go after, but like not make them feel like, oh, you have to absolutely go do this because it's the best thing to do during this. There's a lot to figure out with it. But I enjoy that kind of stuff, so it's always interesting. So yeah, right now I'm just gonna like throw some swirls on in here, see if it looks all right. This is just kind of like the rough sketch phase, right? Bronze crown, silver crown eggs at least. Not sure about gold and higher. Not even sure you'd have in there. Yeah, that's fair. Would it be like kind of like when you've kind of bronzed or silvered a mouse, or like caught certain kind of like hundreds of a individual mouse? Like, would the idea be that they would have a chance of dropping one of those eggs off of them? So I imagine you'd be in that scenario a fair amount, to be honest. So it'd have to be probably a relatively low drop rate, or not really too interesting in terms of what it can drop. Although it may be, the egg that would be like, oh yeah, you've kind of like gotten 1,000 of this mouse. I could imagine that being like, you'd expect a really good reward in that. However, if it's like not a common drop, to help increase its value, suddenly you have kind of like a hunter that's going to sit in, I don't know, the town of Narnia, let's say, just waiting for the kind of gray mouse that way back when they got hundreds of, or well, I'm sure there are way better examples that are a little more relevant, but I could imagine hunters going to kind of like fairly inactive gameplay regions to just kind of like try and get that, and then when they crack it open, because either it's really good and they just want to hang out and do nothing but that to get that reward, or it's like not actually able to be a super exciting reward. Like, I think that eggs for the sake of collection is kind of okay. I think that's, for a lot of hunters, the main reason they go after the eggs. I think the drive isn't so much what's in them. It's more kind of like trying to fill out their collection, which I think is what it should be mainly about. But I think that some of the eggs that we want to have in there, it's kind of like for the hunter who wants to kind of use that to kind of like help them in that area. That's okay too. Like, I think that's totally a great way to play the event, and it's neat because I think this is the spring egg hunt is the event that has like the most potential for the mouse hunter to actually kind of like come up with their strategies, and like what they want to focus on and what they want to get out of it. Certainly, like the Great Winter Hunt is like really good because you can kind of like choose. I'm gonna focus on getting loot for maybe Valor Rift, because you want to prepare for like a really big push in there to get your prestige base really far, or you're just kind of like sending those golems to the floating islands to like just get more cheese and kind of like get ready to do kind of a big push there. But it's kind of like a lot of people kind of like have their own or like similar kind of strategies, or like the birthday, it's kind of, you know, you do the event, you get rewards. Lunar New Year is definitely one of the other ones where it's very much kind of like the hunter kind of designs their plan, and then when they follow through, it like pays off big. So similar in that, where, you know, you really kind of like can come up with your own strategy. I know a lot of hunters went into Valor Rift because they'd built up their luck meter from, you know, the candles and Lunar New Year, which helped with the push there, which is huge. I went into, you know, the Sky Palace. I'd been sitting on a bunch of fuel purposefully because, you know, I wanted to get the extra loot inside the palace, and so that was big payoff. Yeah, eggs can take you basically anywhere in the kingdom if you're looking to complete the collection. So similar in the scope of kind of like you can really kind of come up with your own strategies, and it can be a lot of fun to do that. Let's see, how do we feel about this? Yeah, it is a little like the golden snitch. It's true. Also like what's in also chocolate eggs in general in real life too. Absolutely, absolutely, big fan. Yeah, it's like those kind of like little mini egg things. I've been trying to avoid getting those because no matter the size of the bag, I will just kind of just sit and keep eating them, and that's probably not great. not ideal. All right. Spirals go the other way for the charm. Yeah, they do. That's a good point. Do we want it to kind of like spiral the other way? I almost wonder, like, I feel like I want the spirals to kind of coil even more on the egg. Let me duplicate this layer so I can come back to it if I change my mind. But I think I'm going to try and make these swirls a little more extreme. The Extreme Luck Charm as a reference as well. Yeah, I think that one, let me pull that up, has like, does it have extra wings on it? No, it's just kind of like the wings kind of splay it a bit more. And yeah, the coil is much tighter, so that's actually a very good point. That should probably be the reference I go by, to be honest. It feels more relevant to what I'm wanting to go for here. So let me just do that. Yeah. I think that this one shows the material property a little better because it's kind of got that translucency, the color Grading is great. This just is kind of taking it further. And then like ultimate luck charm, just kind of burning glow. I think I'm going to have a mixture of those two. The egg doesn't fly away. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I used to collect and open all but one of every single egg I got, and then we kind of added the excavator like actual kind of like list collection system, so you can actually like see all the eggs that you did collect. Did we always have it that way? I don't know. Maybe we just cleaned it up and organized it better. But I decided at a point that I just kind of like wanted to clean up my inventory of consumables like that, and so I just opened like all of the eggs over kind of like multiple years and got tons of excellent rewards for that. And then thanks to kind of like being able to go inside that interface, could kind of enjoy seeing all the ones that I have collected, and notice that I have also missed a number, so those have eluded me yet. Always had the list while you've been playing. Yeah, I mean, maybe it has always been there, but I was just kind of like holding out until I was just like, no, my inventory is just, it's just eggs. There's so many eggs. Yeah, I think there's certain things that I like to just have as an inventory item, like the leprechaun's reward. Just kind of sit on that one because it's neat to have it. I got gold. I don't need the gold from that. But I suppose if ever there's a moment where I'm like completely out of gold, and for whatever reason, you know, no one I kind of play with is willing to kind of like pass me some gold for a thing, I guess I could crack it open then. But to me, the actual like item itself is like more exciting to have. Yeah, leprechaun egg. Woo! That one I don't think will do. As much as maybe 2 or 3 people in the game would want, I think most people would be like, that's a little too much. That's too far. There's certainly some very challenging eggs, and we've had ideas for like other really wildly challenging eggs that are kind of not coming this time, but you know, aren't off the table, I would say. Worth considering for future, but we're keeping it, you know, relatively simple. But like, I think people will agree with the ones we're introducing this year. And I know that there were a few that we were going with before, but we had kind of changed based off of kind of some understanding of kind of like what might be a better version. So I'm excited for those. Yeah, some good challenging, but like worthy eggs, I would say. Okay. Now I don't want the this to be overpowered completely by spirals. I like kind of enough open area on the kind of like the egg surface to kind of have that flat that the light can kind of like pass through cleanly and kind of like have those internal reflections. The kind of like spiral kind of rib running along it, I want it to be more of just kind of like a texture shift. So I think having a reasonable gap between them and making it thin enough that, you know, at size you're going to be able to kind of see, maybe that's size there, see enough detail to know what's happening there, but there's enough room between them that you can kind of see through it enough. It's kind of interesting. I've debated with myself about kind of like, should eggs be kind of like ephemeral and see-through, and like, because you crack them open and there's stuff inside, should they be opaque so that there is something hidden within? But yeah, a number of times we've done like hollowed out eggs, or like made of, you know, clouds and like see-through and all that kind of goodness. So it's just, it is what it is. You crack it open and like magically stuff comes out. Yeah. So yeah, I want it to be kind of see-through, but at the same time, you could hide kind of, you know, magical stuff in this, especially if there's this kind of like internal glow. It just kind of spawns stuff when you open it. I don't know. Based on the luck it grants, just falls out of the sky for you. Not sure. I'm not even sure what it's actually going to contain, to be honest. This is one of the eggs where I'm like, I know what kind of the general concept is, so I'm making the design based around that, and then the rewards can kind of be figured out based off of how easy it will be, or how frequent a hunter will be able to claim one of these. I certainly think it's not going to be for every hunter to be able to achieve. So doable, but like, you'll need to be intentional is what I would imagine. Which is what I think a lot of the eggs do well. And at the same time, I like when there's eggs that are just kind of like, you know, they just kind of like happen, and it's like a nice little like, ooh, that's nice. And then others that are very, you have to purposefully go seek it to earn it, and that will reward you when you accomplish it. You know, it's nice to have a mix during this. But yeah, well, like when I like restarted this sketch, I had mentioned the reversing of the spiral, and I never actually implemented that. I'm kind of thinking maybe I'll try that. Let me duplicate this again, because I do like where it's kind of at. It's not bad. I think it's still not perfect, but let me see. Edit mode, give it a flip and a twist. How is this? Now it is kind of like pointed more directly at us. If I do this, can I cut this out onto its own layer without... Yeah, it does cut everything else. All right, let me do that first. All right, so I'm going to cut it onto its own layer. All right, and now I can do a little flip and rotate. Okay, and now recently Clip Studio has added a pretty fantastic tool. It's a liquefy tool, which is one of the things that a lot of people really wanted for this. And a lot of art tools kind of like have developed this because it's really handy. I really actually have not utilized this all that much, so I'm kind of seeing how well this works for me. But it was one of those things that like Photoshop had, and a lot of artists kind of like kept using Photoshop because that was a thing that it had for them. But honestly, I've never found Photoshops to be very good. It always was troublesome if I tried to use it with kind of like the way I work in layers. So I didn't quite like it. But this is actually, it works with how I kind of build up stuff, so it's fantastic. So little art rant actually is, if anybody is like looking at kind of getting into digital art, I would definitely pass out the recommendation that a nice digital tool is Clip Studio Paint. It's basically actually developed for artists, where the kind of like industry standard is Photoshop. However, honestly, Adobe has been just not for the artist. Like a lot of the updates they've done over the past few years have actually kind of like made it harder for artists, and kind of like broken really obvious things that they should have been aware of. Like there was one a couple of years ago where they like did a big update, and like everybody who used a tablet, you know, to draw, which a good portion of, you know, digital illustrators use a tablet. You know, they don't use a mouse and keyboard to paint on their computers. Um, and it like completely like broke it. They stopped working, and that was like a major, you know, push that they had sent out to the community. So it was just like ridiculous that could even happen. I don't know how they missed that in testing. Yeah, it like this liquefy tool, it literally just kind of like lets you grab an area, and it has kind of like a bit of weight. Most of the weight is in the center, and it kind of is softer at the edges, and it kind of like, as you drag your cursor, it'll kind of like influence those pixels and slide them along. I had kind of like made a facsimile of that before this came out, where I used a smudge brush, and I had it like really high strength on the smudge, so you'd like take it and smear it across, and like the section that you'd grabbed stayed pretty close to where it started, but all the edges would just be like kind of like squeegeed along the outside. So it kind of worked for shifting really kind of like dramatically moving things, but you got to go back and clean it up really like a whole lot. Here you can see it's very kind of like wobbly and stuff, and I'm gonna have to clean that up. But like, I also have not really been using this tool, and I know that there's ways to customize it where it would be much more effective for what I wanted it to do here. But I barely have touched this tool, so it's not something that I need to spend the time to fine tune to make it work exactly as I would like it to. Yeah, tools are also extremely customizable. By the way, I'm not like sponsored or anything by Clip Studio. They don't know I exist. But yeah, it's just kind of, I know that I get messages every once in a while about like getting into digital art, and you know, what do I recommend? So those people who are kind of looking to start out, I would, I mean, there's a ton of software out there that is free. So good place to start. You know, you don't need to spend money to create art in this fashion anyways. But there are definitely options that, you know, a little does go a long way. Like Clip Studio is fairly priced for what it provides. I would say it's definitely worth the investment on that. And then for digital artists who are kind of like looking for something beyond kind of like hand-eye tablet, which is a fantastic place to start. used that for many years. I recommend Huon. It's a pretty decent brand of like screen that you draw on, and it's like a quarter the price of Cintiq, which is basically have held the monopoly in the art world for too many years, and so they charge an arm and a leg for like ancient technology that, you know, is useful, but doesn't need to be as expensive as it has been. So those are my main recommendations. Not that anyone asked. Oh, all right. Sent me some mail with some stuff. All right, I will check that out later. As I mentioned, I'm going to be streaming up until lunch. So for me, that'd be 1 o'clock. It's 11:41 right now, so I don't have a whole lot of time to putter around as I have been. So I should probably try and wrap up this sketch by 12, so I can really kind of like get the rendering going, because that's the best part, in my opinion. All right, so just being kind of rambling and drawing terrible curves. When I have like a tool that can really help make smooth curves, you think I would use that. Like there's vector brushes and stuff that I could be using where you just kind of like paint a squiggle and then you can like push and pull and adjust it. And honestly, that would have been really smart, but I didn't use it. Now here I am. Okay. Could use like frosted glass to kind of keep the quality of it, but then allow it to kind of like have that internal compartment feel. And I think I'll probably have a little bit of that kind of like not perfectly translucent texture to it. We'll see. We'll see. I think it'll be a lot of fun to render. That's legitimately when we were kind of like figuring out tasks this week. I had been like, well, I really want to do this egg for Feedback Friday. I think it'll be like fun for me to work on. I just really enjoy rendering materials and having people to hang out with on stream. It's a nice way to do these things. I know that I think Dave's favorite egg was the runny egg last year that we did. That was a pretty good one. Unfortunately, this time it's not like one that you guys are kind of involved in the specific design of. Kind of feel bad about that, but I hope you're enjoying the session. And I know that previously I mentioned soon we should be starting on new kind of like content, new permanent content. And the past 2 weeks, the art team has been working on our concepts and kind of like figuring out where we want to take the new areas, ideas, and designs, and we mocked up a fair amount of kind of concept art for it. So we're feeling really confident about the direction it's going in. We feel really good about the game design and play, and so I hope that the next time I stream we'll be maybe working on that content, unless there's some other thing that I need to kind of like wrap up that week. And so yeah, get excited about that. I know I am. It's going to be a lot of fun to kind of like really start to bring a new group of mice to life with you all. I'm going to try tucking this wing back actually behind the egg and having it kind of peek out. This is just kind of, I have this thing where I like to almost just kind of try new things on stream and challenge myself in the most kind of like uh, likely scenario for things to just go horribly wrong. I don't know why I do that, but I find it fascinating to try. All right, so I don't quite like how it works yet. Obviously, very wobbly from the way the liquefy tool is currently calibrated for how I like to use it. I don't know. Maybe it doesn't quite work with it kind of tucked back like that. Also, I think I like the size of this wing a little better. So I think I'm going to pull this down maybe there. Okay, and I think it's okay that it's like going outside of that silhouette. Yeah, no, I mean it's a new kind of like tool for a lot of the art world. You know, the art world's been around for thousands of years. You know, like creating paintings and all kinds of sculptures and you know visual arts and you know there's certain things that can be done with a physical medium. Um, and there are certain things that a digital medium can do that a physical cannot, and being able to just like grab something and just kind of like nudge it is certainly an incredible power that digital provides that is I would say very difficult to do with a physical medium. I worked with oil paints when I was a student, and you could smudge something along, but you couldn't necessarily just kind of like pick it up and move it. um, you could actually like you could literally cut out parts of a canvas and glue it down and like patch it and you know fill in, but like that amount of work, you might as well just kind of repaint that section instead of kind of like trying to you know literally cut out and paste down. Um, when you have composited stuff, that was maybe a little bit different in like um, animation and stuff like that. You could kind of do a little bit more of that, where you could actually kind of like slice out and kind of like repurpose stuff a little bit, although that not something that was very common or easy to do. But yeah, when it comes to kind of just liquefying a single layer and just kind of manipulating that so easily, it's incredible. Very powerful. I know that like when digital kind of first really started to come into this space, I was in school and I was someone who was kind of like, I want to do this. I want to be a digital artist, and like that's where I see myself going. And a lot of the teachers were very traditional taught. Like they were like, oh, when you get out of school, you're going to work in magazines and you know do covers for like you know that kind of stuff. You'll be you know doing illustrations for books or you know newspapers and articles and stuff like that because that's what they grew up doing. Like that was their careers. So they knew that stuff and like yeah doing art shows and galleries and stuff like that. But I was like wanting to kind of do concept art for video games and like entertainment and that kind of stuff. And like there was very little understanding from the teachers. The faculty kind of didn't have as much kind of experience in that department at all, so they didn't really know how to teach any of that. So I actually, when I first had like a computer class in there, we were kind of like learning some Photoshop stuff, because that was definitely the main kind of like, there was Corel Paint, which was a hog. It would consume your computer's resources, and impressive tool that allowed you to do cool brush strokes and stuff like that that emulated oil paints, watercolor stuff pretty effectively. It's a really cool tool, but hard to use. But like Photoshop was, everybody knew that and had like cracked versions of that or whatever, and like the school had codes for students and such. So we learned how to use that, but like I remember my first class on that, like the teacher had literally come around to everybody with computer printout of the Photoshop toolbar with kind of like little like, this is the paintbrush, it makes pixels a color, and this is the eyedropper tool, use that. Like they basically had never used it, and just kind of like had a printout of the guide when you kind of like first start using the tool. So I ended up like basically helping teach that class, because I had some experience with it. But yeah, it's pretty interesting. And it took 4 years of kind of like being in that system for them to allow me to do digital artwork as my medium, because they always required like, oh, it's got to be like Conte and acrylic or oil paint, or like done this way and that way, because that's what they knew, and they knew how to like critique that. And it was only in my final year that I was like, can I do my like main thing digitally? And like, yeah, I was finally allowed to do that. Ridiculous, but it is what it is. They've come a long way, at least for that. It's now part of the main curriculum. Makes sense. I think I would dare say that most kind of like artists these days do more digital. Well, I would say like of kind of like my generation, anyways, do more digital, and like working in the entertainment industry than traditional. It certainly is fast, but yeah, like it used to be kind of like looked at like it was some kind of not actual valid form of art. So a lot of them kind of like see it as a crutch, like, oh, you didn't learn how to paint correctly or do art correctly. But I think that that's just a foolish way to look at things. It's like if you're going to become a writer, and you didn't write a book by hand and like edit it, like on literal pieces of paper or something like that. Like, oh, you didn't do it correctly because you typed it on a computer and you used that as a tool, as a crutch. It's just kind of, you can make good art, you can write good stuff. You know, it's a tool, and tools are supposed to make things more effective and easier, depending on how you use them. And the problem with kind of like using a tool as a crutch, I suppose, if you were to kind of like make an argument for that, would be that if you don't kind of like learn why something works a certain way, because it kind of like does that for you, I suppose, and you don't understand kind of like how to use that knowledge. But yeah, there's certainly no reason that working with a liquefy tool teaches you the wrong way of doing things or understanding how things work. Man, I am very ranty today, huh? Sorry. Like, not looking at the chat, I'm just talking about stuff that no one asked about. I don't even like care that much, but it just kind of popped into my head, so I'm just gonna ramble. All right, well, we still need a couple more swirls down here. We are 5 minutes to 12, so I really gotta get this sketch ready. So I suppose we can have this kind of wing melt into this kind of shape here. I think that'll look neat. We're gonna zoom out, do some flips, see if we like where it is, and then if it feels like it's good enough, I'd say we're gonna move on to the next phase, which is going to be blocking in the base kind of values and colors, and should be pretty good to just start rendering, to be honest. Now I should have relied on the like tool that just allows me to like create nice, clean, smooth lines that I can easily just adjust, but I've not learned how to use those tools very effectively. So it might have saved time, it might have been better to work with, but at the same time I'm not sure it would have actually been any faster because I'm unfamiliar with their capabilities and how to do what I would want them to do. But I also had claimed, like, oh, I really enjoy challenging myself to things I'm not necessarily comfortable with on stream. So that would have been a perfect candidate to try out vector layers. Maybe I still will. We'll see. At this point, I don't think it's necessary, though. Okay, so I think I have kind of implied some wings. I'm not in love with them. Gonna thicken up the knuckle up here. And erase all that. Not sure where I want to take that yet. Didn't feel like it was the right direction though. That's always kind of like a neat thing about digital too, is like you can just erase it. Why not? You don't need to like pull out a whole new canvas. You can just kind of like erase a section pretty easily. Don't need to get the turpentine and then like wipe it dry and let it, you know, sit and cover it in another layer of primer. Also, oh boy, storing art, that's nice, not having to have a physical space for it. I believe my parents still have like a bunch of my old paintings and stuff like that, like sitting in a garage. They're probably all destroyed from moisture and, you know, just bending a shelf in half. And, you know, don't really care to hang on to them personally, but they're welcome to them, I suppose. Even like working on a single painting, it could like take up a part of my room, you know. Whereas here I have thousands of paintings, and they are all inside of, you know, little hard drive and on the internet. So that's pretty rad. Pretty cool, and easy to print up. Not that I do that with these pieces. Okay. Let's turn this This one here. I don't know. I don't know what I want to do with this under wing here. It's weird. I don't like that. Get rid of it. That's cool. Similar to the nine tails in Naruto. Uh-oh, we hit 12. Oh boy. All right. Veer off here. We gotta start dropping in some rendering. We're gonna run out of time. I want to actually like finish this one today on stream because I think it is simple enough that that's definitely doable. But I also don't want it to be like totally rushed. Oh, I know what I want to do here. Have this kind of like go up here, kind of pulled along here, pinching a bit earlier than this one above it. Yeah, we can do the same here. Cool, good enough. I'm okay with that. Now the base of the wing is the only kind of make that work. And sure. We can have it close to this other bit right there. That's fine that they're kind of clumping together. I feel like it's supported by that bit. Why not make that go more perpendicular to the wing? So do this. Yeah, I think that's a little stronger. I'll make the wing come out a bit here to kind of make sure that silhouette is a bit more clear and obvious. Good. Like that. Yeah. Okay. And this kind of like not accidentally lining up with the direction of the wing will help it read. The wing's going to read stronger than these kind of spirals, ribs, whatever you want to call them. Good, and this one can come up from below. Okay, yeah, I think that that's probably a-okay. I feel like, I don't know, it's not 100% where I want it, but it's also definitely a lot closer than it was like minutes ago, so I'm happy about that. And I think that with the rendering phase, we'll be able to kind of like solidify the feeling that I wanted it to have. My only concern is there is the golden egg, I think, that you get like one of, and I don't want it to be that close to it. I think it kind of has that feeling, but I guess it's got wings. I think that one also is like an opaque gold coating. So as long as I do kind of bring in this kind of translucent, kind of like glass gem kind of feel, and maybe the internal glow as well, I think that'll kind of definitely make that separate enough to kind of work pretty effectively. So we're going to give a quick little flip. It's leaning hard, huh? Maybe just this wing needs to kind of like come down to balance it. It just, does this feel off kilter? It kind of does, you know? Maybe with this kind of like gap here, that'll help. And maybe it just needs a sliver of that gap to show through. And I could kind of splay the tip of the wing out a bit to kind of make that feel a little more stabilized, perhaps. Okay, so that's maybe a bit better. I kind of want to just like shift it all just a hair over. Like, the interesting thing is all the eggs are kind of built off of the same template, but they can be tweaked a little here and there. It's fine. You just don't want to make it like completely different from all the other eggs, because it does belong to the set, and the constraints make it fun for me to kind of work in. Also, the top of the wing here is kind of nice and sturdy, and I think maybe this just needs that same kind of quality there. Okay. All right. I think I've messed around enough with the sketch. Again, running out of time. So hopefully this will work. The more I work on this, I'm like, oh no, it's not working. But I think it'll be okay. So let's start with this seems like an okay color. So we'll fill that, and then we're gonna go and knock the sketch back to about 30%. And we'll go into a new layer. Yeah, new layer would be best. Oop, not that. Here, and what we should do is do all these kind of ribs as a layer on top. That'll make them much easier to kind of render separate from the base material. And then the wings will be their own layer on top of that as well. Here's the question, do we do it? We have less than an hour. Do we attempt to figure out vector kind of like brushes and stuff? I've never used them. Like, really, I've never used them. This is the worst idea, but I'm gonna do it. I don't think it'll speed me up either. I don't even know where to get to them now, because I like took them off my like toolbar basically. It's a bad idea. All right, it's a bad idea. Poll time. Do a poll to see if Jacob should do vector lines. Let's see. Yeah, oh, good point, Jonathan. Thank you. I'll actually make note of that in our kind of spring egg hunt channel. I think that they're aware of that, about kind of the current state of tournaments, and then there being the teamwork egg. So I'll just kind of raise a note about that in case that was overlooked, but very good point. Might need to kind of figure out how that's gonna kind of work. And of course, like, I'm pretty sure that Dave's been kind of mentioning V4 with y'all. But yeah, like tournaments and all that are definitely like something that is very much on the future radar. but it's kind of like one of those things where it's like the systems can't support it very effectively. And instead of kind of like hacking that in and making that kind of like work temporarily and, you know, like just kind of spending the time to get that version of it going, we're kind of instead really trying to get the actual kind of like base engine where it needs to have been. And with that, we'll be able to kind of like really properly address those issues, and make that a thing proper. Because I know we all miss them. We've definitely been kind of like talking about that aspect. So something we want and are working towards. But yeah, we're kind of going to be treating the actual core issue as opposed to kind of like just kind of getting the symptoms sorted so much. But yeah, it takes a bit of time to get that going, unfortunately. So we'll see. We'll see what the kind of like the plan is to kind of work that. I personally don't know exactly what's kind of like in the pipeline on that, because that's definitely a discussion for the code side. I can only be like, yay, let's do something, please. But yeah, my priority as well is, of course, kind of like, well, if we can kind of like actually really get V4 going and do that, like there is so much stuff that is going to be amazing, uh, from like getting V4 going. Like legitimately, for many years, there's been like loads of kind of like, oh, this, you know, like quality of life and really amazing plans and ideas, and then it's kind of like almost impossible without kind of the V4. So yeah, amazingly, we've been kind of like really developing the team, in like just ways that we've never had, and kind of like being able to have legitimately multiple kind of projects really going, and you know, like that's something we've always wanted to do but hadn't really kind of been able to structure ourselves to get that a reality, but now we actually are doing that. The kind of new area is being kind of spearheaded by, uh, like a team that is kind of separate from people working on quality of life and the new engine, and obviously there's like communication and work done between them and all that all the time, but like because of how we've kind of managed to get the right people, doing the right stuff, we're actually finally managing multiple things at once instead of just literally like, all right, put out fires and can only work on one piece of content at a time. And I'm sure that you've been kind of like, aware and seeing kind of like how the events have been, you know, not dramatically changed. And as much as kind of like you and I love kind of like bringing totally new, fresh kind of concepts and ideas to events, because we've been doing that, we've been able to kind of like have these kind of goals and meet them, and we've been really kind of getting some work done where it needs to be, because thankfully the events are solid, and interesting and fun, but you know, we don't need to spend weeks and weeks kind of like, developing that and nothing else. So hopefully, if people are feeling the fatigue of kind of like, oh, it's this again kind of thing, like they understand that the um, the reason behind that is a very good one. So hopefully that's okay. And you know, like we've absolutely 100%, like every event we've done, really kind of sat down and looked through it to kind of be like, all right, here's improvements we are going to be making on it, and you know, like if it kind of like really is a situation of like, no, this is like people aren't going to want that. Um, Actually, kind of like doing something with it. Like you know, the Halloween event was certainly a big effort and a smashing success, I would say. And you know, new kind of idea. So we had realized, and I think rightly so, that that one needed to be addressed. But yeah, like for the spring egg hunt, you know, I think um, we all feel like, yeah, it's maybe kind of, it doesn't have all the aspects that we believe it can, and we've certainly kind of like gone through some concepts of how we might want to change it, but a lot of those would be, I would say, too dramatic right now, and um, not necessarily guarantee something better, because you know, I personally think that the egg hunt itself is awesome, you know, and like a lot of players really do kind of get a lot out of that. So I wouldn't want to remove any of that or anything. And you know, we used to have the whole aspect of like, oh, you got to go do the egg factory kind of thing, and like you're not allowed to basically go and enjoy the event for a while, and that was a big pain that we kind of got rid of, having to like collect each of the base eggs before you could kind of like get your excavator going. Um, so I'm glad we did away with that, because you know, like we've definitely realized that uh, that wasn't adding to the fun of like, you got to go do this kind of silly little thing instead of the fun part of the event, which is like going and collecting the goodies where you want. So hopefully that makes sense, and you can understand and agree with that. But yeah, like as I was saying, the past 2 weeks we've been doing a lot of exciting, very exciting development on the new area. I'm very eager to begin to share some of that with you all very soon, I would say. And like the HUD stuff is well underway for that as well. It's very, very good. Excellent work done on that. But yeah, it's fun. Very exciting. I think you all will be quite happy with what we have in store in the pipeline. I know that like when we were kind of talking about it, there's just always been this element of the entire team just being like, yes, that sounds incredible. So I'll leave it at that. But soon I'm sure we will be sharing more to come. All right. Okay, I'm going to try and just get the rest of this blocked in. So I do want to render it all. Exciting indeed. Yeah, gotta get cracking on this. Boy, yeah, my brain feels scrambled today. nearly done with the stripes. Like a little nub there, why not? Thank you, Roxanne. All right, so we'll do another layer, and this one's going to be for the wings. I'll do one in front and one behind, of course. And I'd say let's just grab that color because why not? Good and good. Cool. All right, and then one behind. And can you all believe that MouseHunt's going to be 14? That's crazy. 14 years. That is certainly something that when I first started on the project did not anticipate. It's truly impressive, I would dare say. And I thank you all, community, for supporting and being a part of this journey, for all of it, really. You all are awesome, and I appreciate you. I'm very happy to be a part of this journey and get to be as involved as I am. It's really incredible and very special. Very privileged. Okay. I would say that this is probably a good base. It's not bad. The wings, I'm kind of like, I think that in the rendering it should work a bit better than it is currently. And I think that, yeah, we just got to get that going. Yeah. Playing it for 12 years. Yeah. It's just something else. It's really unique, really special. Okay, so we're gonna start with where is our highlight, and normally I like to illustrate stuff from the top right. However, with the egg kind of layout and template that we have going, we generally have kind of a more left top light. So I'm going to go by that, and let's just start with a highlight. Technically, the last thing that I tend to do, but I just kind of wanted to give myself that reference point. Drop this sketch. I don't need it anymore. Well, maybe a little bit. For the wings, mainly. Yeah, I'll drop it down to like 10%, barely visible. So I think what I'll do is actually just create a clipping mask on the like egg layer below to kind of work off of. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my most saturated kind of color here, and when I do kind of like a solid translucent material like a gemstone or like a kind of like thick glass or something like that, what I try and do is kind of invert the image because when the light goes through, it's gonna like bounce off the back side. So if we have our light source at the top coming down, it's gonna bounce off the back inside wall and kind of reflect from that side. So I like to kind of like start with, you know, maybe the more kind of shaded areas. I'm going to go fairly saturated, I would say, at the top, and then as if it's kind of being lit opposite to how it would if it was an opaque object. The inside back side, like the light's coming from the top left, I'm going to have the light bouncing off the inside of the bottom right. So lighten that up. I just kind of use a smudge brush to kind of mush that together. And because it's like inside of this, I'm just going to have it be like really nice and saturated, and shrink that down. There we go. Now there's also like the far side has its own spirals. There's light coming through that side. So we're going to have kind of like some layers of this level of detail. You know, maybe another layer on top of this. We can kind of like lighten the whole thing by a bit, okay, to imply light coming through the backside. And now we'll actually erase kind of these continuations of these spirals. However, because it's like, you know, this glass translucent material, we're probably going to be having the light refracted and warped, especially like at the edges, because like face on, it's just kind of like a pane of glass almost. You see straight through it, but as it turns away from you, it's like a lensing effect where it's kind of like the light is going to be bending more kind of like at those extreme angles. So I'm going to kind of pinch at those edges and stretch them further. And what I probably should do is use a clipping mask on this layer so I can add and subtract. So if I turn on create layer mask, and you see that there, I can now use my main brush as an eraser and kind of at the edges erase away, and then, you know, in the center it's kind of more directly see through. But if I want to like bring back what I had there, I just start painting again and it unerases what I had. Another win for digital right there. Being able to kind of, you know, non-destructively erase and kind of just mess around with what I got going on here. You know, it preserves all that information, it just hides it with the clipping mask. Yeah, as I get to kind of like the outer edges, I'm just gonna kind of warp it a bit more. So it hopefully feels like you're seeing through this, and on the far side there's kind of like these same swirls that are kind of, you know, pushing and pulling the surface of this object. Because I do ultimately want it to feel like it is just the same material, it just has deformities on it to kind of like create these patterns. Not bad. I think that does read that way. I think that's okay. Cool. And you know what? Like, this is just me doing what I do, where it's just like, no one's gonna see this detail. What are you doing? But you know, like, you can kind of just get a hint of it, and that's enough. That makes it worth it. And like at the same time, if you over detail something, if you put way too much detail and just noise, like there's just so much going on that you can't really focus on it. Um, like that's a problem. That's bad, kind of like use of kind of the space, So um, making sure that it's going to read cleanly is super important. So if I look at this in grayscale, all this extra kind of swirly detail back there is going to be really low contrast and kind of like evenly kind of spread out. It's going to have a bit of a gradient across it so that like when you're looking at it, it's just almost this pattern in the background. It's not screaming for your attention. It's going to fall back in comparison to the wings, to the ribs in front. So there should be a kind of hierarchy between those elements so that it just enhances it, but it's not taking away from you being able to look at it and like read it. All right, so next let's do a little work on these spirals. So we're gonna start with these being kind of like a more saturated color. I just had them as that kind of more gray just so that I could see the difference between them. But now we're going to go in and I'm even going to do the same thing here where I create a clipping mask so that I can kind of mess around with that without damaging kind of like this layer. Easy to kind of like tweak and adjust. But I'm going to start by kind of lighting up the underside of these ribs, and it's just going to be almost like I took the lighting of the egg itself and just kind of applied it everywhere on here. But overall, I think it's going to be a bit darker just so that it reads against kind of the main structure. And like up at the top, it's going to be like the egg itself is going to be a bit darker up there. So having this be lighter is going to help with the readability on that part of the egg. And I think based off of kind of like just my kind of squint test of this, it's going to take a little bit of taking it to a certain level and then tweaking. So we have about half an hour left. So I gotta make sure to motor. So I'm also gonna do another clipping mask to get that specular highlight because I think that's actually gonna be pretty important to making this work. Either the specular highlight or the internal glow are gonna kind of be necessary to kind of like helping make this read well. Okay. Also, if you are working on something and you want to get like a really a good indication of if it reads well, you can literally just like squint. And if you can squint and make out the details that you should, that's what you want. So this spiral back here is actually messing up with that read because it's kind of blending too much the stuff in front. So if I push that back, now when you squint, you can kind of like make out the differences between those. But now that I have kind of like an idea of where my specular highlight is, I'm going to start to actually put that on top of these ribs, which will further kind of help them pop out and read. generally, I try to do these highlights more at the end and really try to keep it as minimal because they're very kind of like powerful tool when you're rendering, and it can be very easy to just overdo it, which is why doing it too early on is potentially going to cause that issue. So trying to be careful about that right now, but I think that right now to kind of get a good idea of how well it's reading, it's actually something that I need to see. So that's good there. Just a hint of it there and there. So that feels better, but I think that I need some of the darks. For example, if you look at the charm, I have some really deep kind of values in there. And though I would change it now, I don't think that it's very well balanced. I think I need some of that in here to really kind of strike that balance how it needs to be. So if I kind of put this at the tops of these kind of ribs here, I think that that will kind of help them to kind of read in this space. And of course we can always look at the grayscale, which is really kind of very important to understand how effectively this piece is working. This is probably the best time to break out this tool, which again, something that digital is uniquely awesome at, is being able to kind of like change your perspective while working on something. Like if you're working on a traditional painting, sometimes you need to step away, step back several feet, squint at it, look at it inside of a like in the reflection of a mirror to kind of like be able to kind of get a good idea of, you know, because if you look at something too long, you kind of become blind to it. So doing that, I can literally just like hit one button and mirror this, and that kind of refreshes how I see it. Being able to just turn it into a grayscale image lets me only focus on the values, and if that's being read clearly, if there's a nice structure between them, I can squint and see, yeah, those spirals really do feel like they are kind of like standing out enough, right? So I feel like with it right now, there is a depth within the egg itself. And maybe I can even pull that kind of value structure back just a smidge. So I'm gonna grab a nice like deeply saturated color to kind of bring back in to kind of reintroduce a little bit of light tones and value to it. But doing this with the grayscale up. Might even go a little bit lighter. So I think with these ribs, like they're supposed to be, you know, maybe they're not the exact same material, but if they're kind of similar to it, and they're kind of like a micro version of the kind of total shape of the egg, where, you know, it's a round surface and then these are kind of like tubes, so they're also kind of rounded. I want to kind of like have that range of kind of values through it, but it's just like shrunk down. Like if I wanted to get like super detail oriented and try and get like as accurate or whatnot as I can, I would try and kind of like build these reflections that are in the egg and in each of these little ribs and stuff, and I could spend 2 days on this one image if I really wanted to, but I don't think that's what we want for this, so probably not. Okay, let's take a look. Oh, I ended up grabbing gray itself because I forgot that not exactly how Clip Studio works when I do the grayscale trick. So I wonder if I can just color brush. Yeah, I can. It's interesting. It's not what I intended, but I'm gonna make it work. I actually kind of like a bit of that neutral kind of reflection of kind of like gray into this. Kind of makes the other bits that are really saturated work. Yeah, I did a color grab while in kind of like my grayscale view, and that actually makes this image grayscale temporarily. Whereas what I'm used to with Photoshop, it actually is just a color preview, so it doesn't actually change the colors. And so if I did a color grab, like a eyedropper in Photoshop at that time, it would actually grab the color instead of gray. So, whoops. Okay. Gotta get the wings. It does look like the golden egg with wings, yeah. I think maybe I need to push that like transparency further to make sure that that doesn't feel too much like the golden egg. So what we could try is making kind of the center a little more translucent. No, don't think that's what I want. I think maybe just more of this kind of like deeper, richer color up here to kind of like not make it feel like it's gold so much. It needs to be more saturated than that. And I also still have the potential of kind of like having that internal glow happen. So I almost want it to feel like a jelly kind of like texture. So hopefully it's not too close to the yeah, amber glass is good too. I think that's kind of the quality. Much more orange tinted. Yeah, I mean, I think we'll get there by the end for sure. In the next 15 minutes. Okay. I suppose we can go a little bit beyond one, but I don't want to go too far past lunch. I think that kind of like more saturated, darker color did actually help though. And maybe just making that like really saturated at the edges as well. Maybe. Maybe if it like has kind of almost this bubbly glow in the center. If I do another layer here. So it feels like there's something kind of brewing on the inside almost. Perhaps then let's turn off the sketch for a second, just to make sure that's not interfering. Yeah, I like that. It kind of has that kind of like potential of the glow. We can kind of like bloom some light out of that a bit more if we want. Might even want to have some of this kind of like inside the ribs now. Yeah. Sweet. Okay. I think that that's working. All right. Now we just gotta do the wings, and then kind of like final, you know, finishing details to kind of get that glow and balance working. Not the emote you wanted, that's fair. I get ya. The words don't match up with the emote. Okay, so we're gonna do another clipping mask on top of the front wing so we can kind of mess around nice and easily with that. Start with a gradient. So hopefully this is going to read okay. So let's take a quick look in grayscale. It kind of disappears, right? Not sure. It's not quite what I wanted of it, but overall I think the wings kind of aren't exactly there yet. Or hadn't been this whole time anyways, so. Kind of want the egg reflected on the edge of that wing. And like to kind of saturate bounce light stuff. I think it's probably close to where it needs to be. Like there's more potential for like having kind of like light passing through stuff in kind of like really interesting realistic ways, but I just don't think that I probably have the time to do that in 7 minutes. So we'll just kind of, be able to work with what we have, I would say. I think we're good. Okay, so jump to the wing at the back, do the same thing, and then we're at the final countdown. Okay, and we're going to flip the camera back in just a second. So let's get real saturated, because we're going to be getting bounce light from the egg onto the inside of this wing. The inside of this wing we're going to be having quite translucent down at the tip of the wing. It's very kind of hammered out flat. So we're even going to perhaps go to kind of white back there, where we're kind of like seeing through pretty much the thinnest part of this whole egg, and most head on, so it's going to be quite thin there, and let's say maybe here and here. Let's get the specular highlight on this as well. Be a bit of a glow on this outer edge here as well. Cool. All right. 5 minutes. Let's completely turn off the sketch layer. Let's flip it back and see what any is left. So I think that to really get that kind of like full wraparound rounded effect, especially with the material that's so smooth and polished, I need to reflect more of the environment on the surface of it. Because I've kind of got like some internal stuff going on with the material. I got light kind of like reflecting off the front surface from a light source. So that's mostly covered. But now I'm actually just going to do a clipping mask on the whole kind of group here. This isn't necessarily the ideal way to do this, but this lets me just kind of like tackle everywhere real quick. So I'm going to go for more of that kind of gray version, and just kind of this might be a bit of an issue with the shadow area. That's fair. Yeah, I'm just trying to get a bit of the ground reflected up in here. I can go with the white actually. And that just kind of like helps to make it feel a little more rounded. So we got Fresnel kind of lighting going on at the edges here as the surface kind of is really steeply angled away from us. Get some of that stronger reflection because of it on the edges. Okay, 2 minutes. Final quick details we can do. I'm just going to actually pull this back a smidge. Don't need to be overpowering. It's just enough to like trick your brain into seeing it as this kind of glass thing in the world. We're going to just kind of do a little touch up on the shadow. So the actual shadow itself is going to have some like, the whole thing's going to be passing light through it, right? But the light that gets absorbed is going to be, you know, everything but the color that's kind of reflected back to us. So it's going to be very influenced by the material, the light that passes through. And then also, because it's translucent, we're going to have some of the light kind of like warping and bending from the egg shape and kind of concentrating in the center here. And so we'll have oh, we have hit 1 o'clock. Yeah, we'll have the light kind of concentrating right here, the base of the shadow, the caustic kind of warping of light and concentrating of it. So that might need to be tweaked to kind of work as a something that might have a different colored backdrop. Like if we use it for an ad or something like that, I might need to strip out the white in the shadow, because I don't want it to like light too strongly where it's kind of like blocking the light. It's just kind of like the light that does get through is colored by this. Okay. All right, well, I think that's pretty much all the time we have. There's a few things, just housekeeping, really quick. Okay. So, yeah, I'd say that worked. Let's try. Yeah, even with like a dark backdrop, of course the Fresnel kind of like edge lighting isn't gonna feel right because I was doing that based off of a bright, like the white backdrop, right? So because suddenly it's like, oh, the environment is now like a black backdrop, it's not going to look right. It should be, you know, reflecting the environment. So those edges feel weird now, but actually the shadow, because it is kind of passing this light through and it's glowing, I think that actually is fine. So I can work with that. Let's actually save it now, finally. So we'll do that. It does feel like a luck term to me. Let's take a quick look at it in grayscale. I think it could have been balanced better. It's a matter of kind of like fiddling with the kind of like time we had on it. Ultimately, I still can read it. I think the wings are just kind of the thing that get a little too lost, but it was a bit challenging trying to fit, right? If we had more kind of like canvas room, I think stretching them out so that their silhouette was broken away from the main body of it would be perfect, but obviously, you know, we're working with that limitation of like, no, it's got to kind of like be bound to the egg. So I'm okay with that. I think maybe I would just kind of lighten or darken them in comparison to the egg a bit more. That might have balanced it a bit better, but I might still do that after. And yeah, I think that's not bad. I think, you know, from 11 to 1 is not terrible for this. Let's take a quick look at our time lapse, so we can just kind of appreciate the day's work before I head out. Let me see if I have a Larry link. Thank you very much, Michelle. Wonderful. Wonderful. All right. So in the chat right now, I'm going to be sharing a Larry link for you all. So do grab that up. Feel free to pass it around too. Yeah. Whose dog's so thirsty? Yeah, Swash had a big walk. And then just because I did kind of tease about it, I'm going to just share a little thing real quick. So let me see. Where are you? Where are you? Did sketch this for a while, huh? Now, next season we shall be designing an excellent cheesecake. All right, get into the rendering. basically the halfway mark, I suppose. Well, it's a little past halfway. We can look at the progress bar down here. Yeah, I think as well, I like what I had with the kind of translucency being like seeing the kind of spirals through it. I feel like maybe if I was able to plan it better, I would have been able to kind of like really have that come through a bit better than it is. Because the kind of specular highlight eats it a bit too much maybe, and then like there could have been a little more room between them, and then that kind of like base glow at the bottom maybe is a bit much and kind of eats it up as well. Or I could kind of like bump up the contrast a bit more, but I had actually knocked it back because I felt like at the time maybe it was conflicting with the readability. But that's also why like you gotta kind of like assess as you go and kind of like push and pull, because like here we go. When did that open it? It did not. Open with. Nope. You see nothing. That's it. Yeah, when you have kind of like you're trying to work out the values and stuff, and you don't have all of them kind of blocked in, kind of hard to really judge the actual kind of like impact of any of them. So you know that's something that maybe I should have waited till you know like the wings were kind of put in a bit further. Yeah, like I could try really quickly to just kind of push that a bit further. Yeah, I don't think it's going to quite read. It's going to be small enough that I don't think that it will be a good idea to like push for that to be even noticeable, because that would definitely risk being noisy and unreadable. Even as it is, you know, like all these little kind of like gray bits and you know, the specularity and stuff is almost too much. You know, like if we kind of take a quick look there, I think it just needs to be back ever so gently. Actually, I should be doing touch-ups on this layer. It's kind of my master layer now that kind of like can override any part of the image. Yeah. Okay. All right. All right. I could fiddle with this forever, so I should not get caught up in this. It is time for me to bid you adieu. Hope you all stay safe and are doing well. It's a time, you guys, but yeah, take care of each other and take care of yourselves, and I appreciate you all. So thanks for hanging out on this little art journey today. It was nice to kind of do start to finish, even though it was like a little tiny kind of thing. It was a lot of fun. I really quite enjoy these little kind of items, and you know, I definitely appreciate you all kind of just enjoying this time with me. And I shall see you probably in 2 weeks, and I'm really excited about what we're going to be working on to come. So I hope you look forward to that as well. But yeah, until next time, I'll catch you later. All right. Bye.